All right, once again, let's convene the meeting. So on to number 2, disclosure on pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. I think Councillor Ioannidis, he's not on. Okay, all right, that's okay. In that case, none. Consent item, can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Davey. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'd like to take out 3.1.
Okay, 3.1, request to take it out as a motion. All those in favor for that? Opposed? That carries. Okay, do you have questions of
Yeah, I
staff?
have a question for staff. As you know, the demolition of this property generated a lot of discussion at the Heritage Committee. In the end, as reported in your report, it was passed. But I just wanted you to speak a bit to, what's happened here, because hopefully demolition is not the way we go when it comes to heritage buildings. And clearly this one was, left to decay in the way that it did. And how can we prevent this then in the future?
Through you, Chair. So this is a fairly unique scenario. Councillor Chapman, you are correct. This property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, and as a result, the demolition was considered and discussed at a Heritage Kitchener meeting last year. Staff see this as a fairly unique scenario. We have challenges, and we are actually moving forward as the applicant. The City of Kitchener is the applicant to ensure property standard compliance. So that occurs when we have a property standard violation, and this is our very last opportunity or last choice for recourse. Our actions that we can take are governed under the building code. And in this case, we had an independent engineer review a conditional assessment of the building. And property standards has to consider whether it is more cost effective to demolish the building or to repair it to a state in which it can be rehabilitated in the future. It was concluded that it's about 10 times more expensive for the replacement or the repair of the building, and the recommendation and the most cost effective is to demolish and remove buildings from the site. I agree with you that demolition should not be the norm. This is an outstanding property standard violation issue that has been going on for several years. After the discussion at Heritage Kitchener, we have revised and re-resourced our review of vacant land, vacant properties that are designated under the Heritage Act. So that work was not prioritized during the pandemic. We were utilizing resources and bylaw resources for different matters. However, we have re-implemented a work plan. And since this was first brought to our attention, we have inspected all vacant properties that are designated under the Heritage Act and have taken property standard orders wherever necessary so that we can be proactive in looking at all vacant buildings so that they don't fall to a state of disrepair where demolition is the only option.
And has this happened with any other buildings before?
Through the chair, this is not typical process. I'm not familiar with. We've had demolitions where an owner has let the buildings fall apart, or a purchaser has bought a building and has torn it down, usually for redevelopment in a more intense residential scenario. In this case, the application that's before council is the demolition control application. So the decision on the demolition from a heritage perspective has been made. The question before council is to permit the demolition of a dwelling unit without an immediate replacement. So if there was an immediate replacement proposed under the delegated authority bylaw, this wouldn't come to council. Tonight, what's in front of you is the permission to remove a dwelling unit without redeveloping it.
And do you foresee the redevelopment of that property?
Through the chair, so we will move forward pending the outcome of tonight's decision, and then we will not take ownership of the property, and it'll be ultimately the owner if they choose to sell it, or if a new purchaser if they redevelop it. It does have residential zoning permission, so it could be redeveloped with a residential use in future.
Okay, thank you.
Items have been moved. All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry, operator? All right, overview, okay. All right, good, let's just do that again, sorry. New system, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries, thank you. All right, we have no delegations tonight. We'll move on to the discussion items of the evening, and 5.1 is the Kitchener 2051 Evaluating Approaches to Growth. Staff, I believe, have a 15-minute presentation, and John, I think you are heading it off. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So today we're here to talk about Kitchener 2051 and specifically evaluating approaches to growth. So Kitchener 2051 is a project about developing the city's new official plan, and determining the preferred approach to how we grow and change by 2051 is a key component of the new official plan and is shaped by multiple inputs, including the city's current strategic plan, community values that had emerged over the course of community engagement undertaken this past fall, big ideas that represent important areas in which we must make significant progress, and focus areas that help identify how to achieve them, and the ways in which we can evaluate approaches to growth, which is what we're here to talk about today. All these inputs will lead to official plan policies that will ultimately implement this vision for Kitchener in 2051. The Kitchener 2051 project team engaged with over 2,000 residents and collaborators during our Phase 2 engagement program this past fall. Working with our engagement consultant team, we have distilled 5 community values, which represent the broad themes of what we heard over the course of the engagement, and serve as a bridge between the engagement and future technical work. As we move forward with our technical and engagement processes, these values will be reflected in emerging policy directions and will ultimately shape the new official plan. So as just mentioned a couple slides ago, the big ideas represent the areas in which the new official plan must make significant progress and touch on the themes of our neighborhoods, our economy, and our environment. We also have focus areas that identify tangible and more specific ways in which these big ideas can be achieved. The big ideas, along with the focus areas and community values, were previously presented at a council strategic session held this past February 10th. So the Kitchener 2051 project is now at the point where we will be assessing where and how Kitchener can grow and change by 2051. This assessment will be informed by 3 components: community parameters, technical evaluation criteria, and council direction and cross-divisional staff priorities. The evaluation process is anticipated to result in a preferred approach to growth that reflects a composite or hybrid of all 3 of the approaches and refined based off of the evaluation process. So the first of these inputs include community parameters, which were informed by the community values and vetted by the Kitchener 2051 Community Working Group. The community parameters will help facilitate conversations with the community about trade-offs and opportunities about how and where Kitchener can grow in the future. These parameters are not intended to be exhaustive or lead someone toward picking a preferred approach. Rather, they will focus on understanding the community's priorities that will ultimately inform a preferred hybrid composite scenario. The second input includes technical evaluation criteria. These are informed by the Kitchener 2051 technical studies and modeling work. They include criteria to assess physical infrastructure, including the ability of Kitchener's roads and underground pipes to accommodate potential growth and change. These criteria will enable analysis of each approach to growth and identify different opportunities and constraints that may need to be addressed. They're also broken down into 5 distinct themes: supporting Kitchener's economy, protecting and enhancing the natural heritage system, being future-focused, planning for change across the city, and planning for greater integration of places, systems, and networks. Additional information on these technical criteria are included as part of Attachment A to the staff report. The third input into setting the approaches to growth include council direction and cross-divisional staff priorities, which are informed by regular and ongoing engagement with yourselves, along with city staff. In terms of next steps related to the evaluation of approaches to growth, we will be hosting an engagement event and speaker series on Saturday, April 5th at St. Mary's High School. With the engagement, we'll continue throughout April with the use of a community conversation kit that will see conversations facilitated by the community with community members on emerging policy directions that could ultimately find their way into the new official plan. Additional information and a digital version of the in-person engagement events will be available on the project webpage at engagewr.ca/Kitchener2051. This upcoming round of engagement in April accompanies ongoing dialogue with First Nations and Kitchener 2051's Community Working Group. So in conclusion, staff are recommending that the community parameters and technical evaluation criteria as presented in report DSD 2025-084 be used to inform continued community and collaborator engagement on Kitchener 2051 and approaches to growth.
Thank you very much. I gave you 15 minutes by accident instead of saying 5. The item is 15 minutes. Okay, we have other staff in attendance too, Mr. Dunagany, Ms. Goss, and Ms. Bustamante. Questions? Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple questions. First of all, on slide number 20, where you talk about the advisory committees, DAC and the Environmental Committee are not mentioned. I was just wondering if they were, is this supposed to be an exhaustive list, or is it just examples of advisory committees?
Through the chair, we were scheduled to attend Climate Change and Environment Committee in December. I believe that meeting had to be canceled due to lack of quorum, so we'll need to make sure we have an opportunity to get back there. I think we have not been to DAC yet.
Okay, I just saw it listed all the places you were going, so I was just hoping that you weren't going to forget those two.
Absolutely not.
And there could be others that I just noticed those two are missing. The other thing I was wondering, will you be approaching condo dwellers, like in the new condo buildings? Because, you know, I think their input as to how, you know, the downtown is growing thus far and how it's impacted their lives or lives of the neighborhood might be a worthwhile group of people to also get input from. Is that something you've considered, or?
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair, that's good advice and good consideration, Councillor Chapman. We're trying to really go broad in who we reach through our community engagement. So far, you'll hear some of the stories about who we've talked to and how in the What We Heard report. And I think you're right that condominium dwellers, high-rise dwellers, mid-rise dwellers are important constituents to involve in the conversation.
Okay, my final question has to do with slide number 5 in attachment C. It refers to the Dundee secondary plan, but no other secondary plans. Have all the others been scrapped? Well, maybe that's what. Do they no longer exist, or are they, you know, could you just remind us of the status of the secondary plans?
Go ahead.
So through the chair, the only ongoing active secondary planning work that we're doing is the Dundee secondary plan. That's why it's listed specifically in the report.
And what's the status of the other secondary plans?
So most of the central neighborhood secondary plans were repealed through council's approval of the Growing Together framework last March.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. I just have some questions about the neighborhood conversation kits. Will these conversation kits be able to facilitate conversations with not just like local, like physically local neighbors, but different, say, community clubs or groups that have members from different parts of Kitchener? What exactly in a community conversation kit is your kind of ideal participant?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm really excited about the community conversation kits as an opportunity to allow folks in the community to have conversation across whatever, shape of community makes sense to them. So it could be neighbors, it could be their baseball team, it could be their faith community. All those are kind of encouraged and possible. Also exploring opportunities to do that digitally. Some folks on the community working group are really going to be our most important ambassadors in leading, some of these community conversations. But yeah, it's going to be available to really whoever feels that they could host that conversation, and whomever they'd like to host it with is certainly what we're hoping for, a broad diversity of communities of interest in geography.
And is there a physical kit that comes? It is. Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, we'll have printed kits as well as the opportunity to download if that makes sense for folks if they don't want to come to City Hall. Kind of one of the exciting things or fun things that we're able to do with this conversation kit is kind of allow this conversation to host kind of over a meal. So we sort of offhandedly call it the pizza party. So if people want to host a conversation, get together, have pizza with the community that they've identified that they want the conversation kit with, they give the kit back, completed kit back to staff, and we can reimburse their meal.
Great. Thank you so much.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And I'm wondering, have we taken a look at including information on Kitchener 2051 with My Ideal Kitchener? So whenever we send this out to our schools and our students to comment on, what they'd love to see in an ideal city, this to me is kind of a perfect pairing. Is that something we've considered?
Through the chair, not yet. We have done some engagement with young folks in schools, grade 5 students. So far not paired up with My Ideal Kitchener, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, because I don't think that's gone out yet. I think probably that should be coming up soon because it goes out in June that we do that. I think this might be a really great opportunity to have students kind of help them focus on because they're the ones that will be looking at living in our city in 2051. So thanks for considering that.
Councillor Davey.
Yeah, no questions. I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Excellent. All right. Councillor Stretch.
If a class participated, would they also be eligible for a class pizza party?
Sure, why not?
Are we sure our budget can allow? We're going to get a lot of requests now.
Yeah, through the chair, we've set an upset limit for the amount of pizzas we can reimburse. So if we start running up against that upset limit, we'll have to reassess the capabilities. But so far, so good.
Okay, all right. I was just kidding anyways. All right, so the item has been moved by Councillor Davey. I see no one else in queue. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. For item number 6, which was a public hearing matter under the Planning Act, while notice for this matter was provided, this item is no longer intended to come forward and will not be considered this date. Staff anticipate that it will be scheduled for an upcoming Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting, and further notice will be provided. And there are a number of other information items for the committee's attention. Seeing no one else in the queue, I'll get a mover to adjourn. Councillor O'Dooney, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chapman? That's okay. That's why I mentioned to the committee's attention, and then it's to your attention. Go ahead. Which one do you want to talk about? 7.1. Okay. We don't need to take a vote to take an item out. Do we do it? Yeah, that's all. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Go ahead, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. So under attachment A, there are just a couple items that I wanted to get clarification on. The first one has to do with addressing NIMBYism. And I don't really know what's being referred to here. So if we think of 4611 King Street East, we had residents come. I use that example because it was the most recent example of a development where, you know, residents were worried about the setbacks, the traffic in the neighborhood. Is this NIMBYism, and how are we addressing it? Is this what we're talking about when we say addressing NIMBYism, or what are we actually referring to?
Through the chair. It's a good question, and it's one of the broader objectives that we put forward in the development of Housing for All initially. And I think the short answer is that addressing NIMBYism is an ongoing project. It's really about building kind of consensus and dialogue within the city to ensure that that we essentially have shared goals for the development of you know, equitable housing across the city. So we've striven, you know, over the last several years to have these constructive conversations and share information and develop consensus through the various plans we've worked on about a vision for the future of the city. But NIMBYism does not necessarily mean opposition simply to a development or some aspect of development. There's always room for discussion, for debate, for opposition. It's about making sure that conversation is constructive.
Okay. And how do you distinguish then, I'll ask, how do you distinguish between NIMBYism and people's concerns about, you know, keeping to the plan, I'll say? You know, we've got bylaws, we've got an official plan, and, you know, oftentimes residents will come and say, you know, just stick to what you've already approved. So
Councillor Chapman, on top of what Lucas has added, perhaps Councillor Reedman can add to your question, and then you can. Mr. Reed, huh? What did I say? Did I say chat? Oh, did it councillor? I'm sure you would be a really good councillor too, Mr. Reedman. But that's offending you by calling you councillor, so I really take that back. Mr. Reedman. Oh, go ahead.
Through the chair, and so this was an action that was identified through Housing for All, one of the 44 actions, and so this is part of our response to that. I recall when we were drafting the document that there were challenges not only with just understanding the development process, which is where the development explainer videos came in, what the roles and responsibilities of a planner were versus council versus the Ontario Land Tribunal, but also there were issues around that time of affordable housing projects and misunderstandings around what they actually meant and what they meant for communities. And so this strategy was really meant to help address both of those issues, to make sure we're able to build affordable housing and have constructive dialogue with the community, as well as, you know, helping people understand a very complex process around land use development in Ontario.
Right. Okay, that's fine. My next question has to do with item number 6 under priority 2. And it says, recognize and treat those in need of housing or related social benefits as experts in what is required and able to positively inform the outcome of decision-making processes. And we say that we've achieved that. What does that mean to say that we've achieved it? And would the residents themselves agree that they've been treated as experts? And I mean, I bring these up because this is an ongoing process, right? And I just want, you know, I just want it to be addressed. Pardon me?
Through the chair. Yeah, this is something that when Housing for All was first drafted was integral to the vision, that you integrate the experience and understanding of people who have experienced housing precarity and homelessness. And again, this is one of those goals that was established that is really truly never achieved. It's ongoing and iterative. And so we continue to engage with the Lived Experience Working Group, which is comprised of people who have experienced homelessness, addiction or mental health issues, or housing precarity. But we don't see this as answering all the questions and fulfilling our obligation to engage with people with lived experience. We see it as ongoing, and we're always willing to engage and understand others and their experiences. That's why in the development of the housing needs assessment that's forthcoming, we've placed considerable focus on putting a social lens on the development of that analysis. So working with nonprofits, social service agencies, other levels of government to really understand the full spectrum of experience of marginalized groups within the city.
Okay, but in the report, it says that point has been achieved. So is that really something that should be labeled as ongoing?
Through the chair, certainly, I think, yeah, you make a good point, and perhaps a more accurate reflection would be in process, but we do want to acknowledge the significant contribution Luke has made and the role they've played in informing some key policies. So, you know, in principle, it's never fully achievable. I think within the scope of this Housing for All plan, we've achieved it to the degree that is possible within the last 5 years, but of course, there's always room for increased work on this matter.
Okay, my last question has to do with, can I keep going?
Well, you're way past your time, but if you're keying back in the second time, Ms.
Yeah.
Ms. Bustamante, do you want to speak as well? To your last question, just to add some additional.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Chapman. So really priority number 2 was about a commitment to lived experience collaboration. And so just to build on what Mr. Van Meermaas was saying, it really was new for this council and this community to have lived experts at the table, reviewing our planning work, commenting on the eviction survey, helping us understand their experiences and really folding that into the planning projects. So I think in terms of us entering into that era and being now in the 3rd year of working with the Lived Expertise Working Group, we did identify this as achieved, but I think the entire team takes your point that this is a dialogue that will continue into the future, so achieved and ongoing, I would say.
Councillor Chapman,
Thank you.
your second round?
Yeah, but just one more question.
Okay.
It has to do with item number 40. It says track and monitor rent evictions where tenants are displaced from their homes. And then it goes on in the description section of the report to refer to rental replacement bylaw. I mean, those are 2 different things, right? So, and I would say that we really haven't achieved the rent eviction tracking and monitoring it thus far. So again, I'm not quite sure. Maybe you can just clarify what you're referring to here.
So through the chair, as part of the work that we did for the rental replacement bylaw, there was an online eviction and displacement survey that is still available for folks to provide some input. It did shape the rental replacement bylaw, and it is ongoing survey work that is being used by staff to inform a report back to council on evictions through renovations in June. I would also suggest that, you know, the rental replacement bylaw is one tool that we have used with respect to evictions. It may not be the tool that can be best used for evictions due to renovations, but it is one tool, and the tracking and monitoring of rent evictions was used to inform that work, and it is ongoing as well.
So again, it says achieved. Maybe it'd be better described as ongoing. No? Is that a question?
No, it's a statement, and I think it's noted by staff, so.
Okay.
Again, it's, okay, all right.
Thank you.
You're good? Yeah, meeting adjourned.